we're delighted to be joined by Dr. Tony Levatino. Dr. Levatino, thank you so much for joining us here. You're in Arizona, we're in Dublin, but thankfully we're able to talk and discuss your life and also what you've learned through your practice as an obstetrician. So could you tell us first of all a little bit about how you came to the pro-life position? Because I think it's a pretty harrowing tale at times.
When I was in training, we were doing first trimester abortions, suction D and C abortions in the delivery room of all places. And as I said, I had no qualms about it. And when it was my turn to do them, I would do 2, 3, 4 in the morning and never thought anything of it. As I said, second trimester abortions were done by saline, which is totally different. I went into private practice and continued to provide abortions. And it was during my training years actually that I had my first doubts about doing abortions. They were strictly selfish because my wife and I met when I was a first-year resident in the hospital, and we married after dating for a year. And like many young couples, we were looking forward to having a family. She's Irish, by the way, and we found out pretty quickly that we just weren't getting pregnant. She had an infertility problem. We had an infertility problem, but it turned out it was something going on with her. But here I am doing abortions during the day. And at night, I'm trying to find one more phone number to call to try to find a baby to adopt. And this was an odd kind of contradictory existence for a while. And I remember very specifically one abortion I was doing. Because when you do an abortion, you have to keep inventory. You have to make sure you get all the pieces. We'll talk about that later. And I was in the process of doing that abortion. I looked and here I am trying to find a child of my own, but I'm doing an abortion. And I'm looking and thinking, gosh, wouldn't this lady even allow us to take, just allow us to take her child home and care for her as our own? Of course, it doesn't usually work that way. And so I had the doubts were strictly selfish, but those were the first doubts I had about it. Months after we started doing this, in August of 1978, I was working in the operating room with an attending physician. And what we had done was my wife and I decided that we were getting so frustrated by not being able to find a child that I thought, this is kind of foolish. I'm a physician and I know lots of physicians. So we started advertising. We literally talked to every physician we knew and people in our hospital to let them know we were looking for a child, hoping we would get lucky. And in August of 1978, I was working in the operating room and the circulating nurse tapped me on the shoulder and she was holding up a piece of paper that said, "Call Marcia as soon as you're done." Well, Marcia was the head of social services at our hospital. That's all it said, but I knew what it meant. And sure enough, she informed me there was a 15-year-old girl in labor in the delivery room. She had had no prenatal care. First time she saw a doctor was the day before, but now she was in labor. She wants to give her baby up for adoption. Are you interested? Of course we were interested. I remember staring at the face of the telephone to call my wife with this news and know that I was just 7 digits away from becoming a father. And literally, by the grace of God, we were able to adopt a little girl in August of 1978 that we named Heather. Fantastic. We finally have a baby. And over the next 4 years, I did 1,200 abortions, and over 120 of them were these second trimester D&E abortions. Hey, but life's good. We're doing well. The practice is growing. The kids are doing fine. And everything was great until June 23rd of 1984. It was a beautiful summer day in Albany, New York, where we were living at the time. It was a Saturday. I was on call, but it wasn't busy. We took the kids to an amusement park. We had dinner together. Heather was exactly 2 months away from her 6th birthday. Sean was just a couple of days away from his 5th birthday. And they were playing in their yard when we had friends come over for cake and coffee. We were talking with our friends, and at 7:25 that night, we heard the screech of brakes out in front of our house. The kids had gone out on the road and Heather had been hit by a car. We ran out and did everything we could, but it made absolutely no difference. And Heather literally died in our arms in the back of an ambulance that night. If you have children, you may think you have some idea of what that might be like. If you haven't been through this yourself, You have no idea. I hope you never find out. But what do you do after a disaster? You bury your child, you take some time off, and then you try to get back into your life. And I don't know how long it was, how many weeks after her death it was, but I showed up at OR number 9 in Albany Medical Center to do a second trimester D&E abortion. And I wasn't thinking of this as anything special. It was routine. I had other things on my mind. And I started that abortion, and I haven't described it yet. I think we may have an opportunity to do that later, but you have to do a D&E abortion, you have to literally tear a human being apart, limb from limb. And I reached in with an instrument called a Sofer clamp. This is a Sofer clamp. This is what they look like. And literally ripped out an arm or a leg and just stared at it in the clamp and got sick. But you know something, when you start an abortion, you can't stop. You have to make sure that you get 2 arms, 2 legs, and all the pieces, because if you don't, your patient's going to come back infected, bleeding, or dead. So I finished that abortion. And for the first time in my career, after all those abortions, I really, really looked at that pile of body parts on the side of the table. And I didn't see her wonderful right to choose. And I didn't see what a great physician I was helping her with her problem. And I didn't even see the $800 cash I made at the time in 15 minutes. All I could see was somebody's son or daughter. And it occurred to me in that moment that somebody had come to me, this patient had come to me and figuratively, never literally, but figuratively had said, here's $800, kill my son or daughter. And I was the kind of physician that would look her right back in the eye with no qualms at all and say, sure, I'll do that. Our daughter had died. We were mourning her death. And this is, and now the doubts about abortion that I had were coming back in spades after the death of my own daughter. I told you that, earlier, my wife and I had chosen early in our relationship not to talk about abortion. The problem with that, of course, in any relationship is that when you stop talking about one important topic, is you stop talking about other important topics too. And we've been drifting apart. And I was hurt. I was hurting. We were grieving. But I kept on doing abortions because I said, well, I know why I feel bad. I'll feel better. I'll be okay. I was that dedicated. But I got into a blame game. It was the girl's fault for getting pregnant. It was the hospital's fault for allowing him. It was the nurse's fault for scheduling him. It's everybody's fault but mine. And my wife had had it up to here with this and with everything after the loss of our daughter. And after a couple of months, she was 5 minutes away from walking out of the house with our son. But as I said, she's Irish, and she was going to have her say. And one evening when I went into one of my rages, she looked at me square in the eye and said, you know what? It's not the girl's fault. It's not the hospital's fault. And it's not the nurse's fault. It's your fault. You stupid idiot. If you're feeling this bad about it, why don't you just quit? And that was the first time that she broke our rule about talking about abortion. And it started a 2-hour conversation between the two of us about what was going on. And it was the next day that I went back to my partners and told them that I would no longer do any more of these second trimester D&E abortions. It was just too painful. I would just do the little ones, the first trimester abortions we were doing in the office. And for a couple more months, I soldiered on doing those. I know people look up to physicians. You think of us as so smart, but we're no different than anyone else. When a doctor figures out that killing a baby this big for money is wrong, then it doesn't take them too long to figure out that it doesn't matter if the baby is this big or this big or this big or maybe even this big. It's all the same. And it was in February of 1985, I'm ashamed to say it was that long, when I finally went back to my partners a second time and told them I would no longer do any abortions. I haven't done one since. There's no way in hell I'll ever do another one.
Well, that is such a powerful story, your own life experience and coming to a position where you realised the dignity of human life, and it's so much to have went through as a physician as well in terms of your personal loss and coming to terms with everything that happened before and after that too. But thankfully you're here and making such a difference. around the world, because your videos have been seen by many, many millions of people around the world who now know your story. And it seems to me as if you probably have a very important lesson to convey to doctors in our own country of Ireland and many, many other countries as well, about that respect for human life that upholds any true practice of medical ethics. So unfortunately in our own country here in Ireland, we're now in a situation where potassium chloride is being administered and injected into the baby's heart in order to prompt a heart attack and a very, I think, painful death for the baby. And I was hoping that you could talk a little bit more about that method of abortion, please.
Those type of abortions were, what I did were second trimester D&E abortions up to 24 weeks. A second trimester D&E abortion, as I said, is a brutal procedure. So I want the audience and people to imagine, imagine for a minute that you're an obstetrician gynecologist like me. And imagine for a minute that you're a pro-choice obstetrician gynecologist like I used to be. Your patient today is 17 years old. She's 20 weeks pregnant. Now, a 20-week pregnant woman, her uterus is all the way up to her umbilicus. If you could see her baby, and that would be easy to do on an ultrasound, her baby would be the length of your hand, from the tip of your middle finger to your wrist. That's the size of a 20-week baby, head to rump, not counting the legs. She's been feeling her baby kick for the last 2 weeks, but now she's asleep on an operating room table, and you're there to help her with her problem. First thing you do is you introduce, after you remove some substance from the cervix, the first thing you introduce is a suction catheter. This is a 14 French suction catheter. It's about 9-10 inches long. It's clear plastic. There's a hole through the center. And picture yourself putting this instrument up through the cervix into the uterus, and instruct your circulating nurse to turn on the suction machine. And what you'll see is pale yellow fluid running through the tubing and in the machine. That was the amniotic fluid that was there to protect the baby. Now, if she were 12 weeks pregnant or less, now a 12-week pregnancy is the width of your hand. That's 12 weeks. Or smaller, you could pretty much do the whole abortion with just this one instrument. That's what a suction D&C abortion is. If any of your audience has not seen the movie Unplanned, I would urge them to see, and you will see a 13-week, what a suction abortion at 13 weeks looks like. You can pretty much do the whole abortion with this one instrument, just like it's shown in the movie. But when babies are this big, they don't fit through catheters this size. So then you need a Sofer clamp, and I showed this before. This is a Sofer clamp. It's made of stainless steel. It's about 13 inches long. And I know it's difficult to see, but the business end up here is about 2.5 inches long and 1/2 inch wide, and has rows of sharp teeth. This is a grasping instrument. When it gets a hold of something, it does not let go. A D&E abortion can be done as a blind procedure. You can use ultrasound, but I never did. And you do it all by feel. So picture yourself taking this instrument, put it up through the cervix. Be very careful not to perforate the uterus because the walls are thin and soft. And then blindly grasp anything you can and start to pull. And I mean pull hard. And out comes a leg about that big, which you put down on the table next to you. And reach again, grab, pull hard. Out comes an arm about the same length, which you put down on the table next to you. And then reach in with this instrument again and again and tear out the spine, the intestines, the heart, and lungs. Now, the head on a baby that size is about the size of a plum. You can't see it if you're not using an ultrasound, but you can feel it. You're pretty well sure you've got it if you're around something and your fingers are spread as far as they'll go. You know you did it right. If you crush down on the instrument, white material runs out of the cervix. That was the baby's brains. Now you can pull out skull pieces. A lot of times the little face comes back and stares back at you. Congratulations. You've just successfully performed a second trimester D&E abortion. You just affirmed her right to choose. You just made $800 cash US in 15 minutes. That's what I used to make. They charge a lot more today. That's what a D&E abortion.
And that, Dr. Levatino, by the way, for viewers, is what Irish doctors are currently being trained to do at the moment. So that will soon be rolled out in Irish hospitals, that particular method.
That a baby at 22 weeks, 22 weeks from last menstrual period is viable. So when you're talking about D&E abortions up to 24 weeks, you're talking about viable children at those late stages, perfectly capable of living outside the womb with proper care. Now, when you get past 24 weeks, and this gets to your question, with using potassium chloride, or the other drug that can be used is called digoxin. These medications are given to induce basically, as you said, a heart attack, to stop the fetal heart from beating. Because the D&E abortion procedure relies on tearing a baby apart. But beyond 24 weeks, the bones and the tissues are getting so strong, you can't just easily pull them apart. You need a different method. And that's when the so-called mold technique was developed. And what it means is you're going to give a drug, potassium chloride or digoxin, administered in high doses directly to the baby to cause fetal death. You hopefully confirm fetal death using an ultrasound, and then you induce labor. This is basically how these procedures are done. There is a clinic and now, of course, Roe was talking about stopping abortion, that states could prohibit abortion after fetal viability, which in 1973 was 27 weeks, but now is 22 weeks. But see, now the pro-abortion politicians in my country, they want to have abortion anytime, for any reason, all the way up through the time of birth. And some politicians have even suggested that once a baby's born, then you decide whether you want to keep it alive or not. This is how bad it has gotten. There is a clinic, there are several clinics in the country that do these even later abortions. They'll do abortions at any time during pregnancy. There's one particular clinic in Albuquerque, New Mexico, called Hold Women's Health, or Southwest Women's Options. And Live Action, Lila Rose, many of you know about Lila Rose. She's the one who produced the videos that I did about abortion procedures. Did a video inside Southwest Women's Options with a patient who was 27 weeks pregnant, going in and inquiring about her abortion. And it's a very eye-opening video to watch. For starters, the woman calls and is talking to the receptionist, and is told that the abortion would be, at 25 weeks, the abortion would be $8,000. And they don't accept insurance. That's $8,000 cash, thank you. And then it's $1,000 more every week after that. And then you hear discussions between the patient and the counselors, and between the patient and the doctor. And you realize, and this video is worth seeing, and I will send it along, but you realize that they are talking about having a woman labor alone in a hotel room. And by the way, she's 27 weeks pregnant. So at $8,000 for a 25-week abortion and $1,000 for every week after that, a 27-week abortion is $10,000 US cash. And for $10,000 US cash, these caring physicians cannot afford to have a doctor or a nurse sit and attend this woman while she goes through labor. Labor is not a benign process. You can bleed, you can hemorrhage, you can have high blood pressure, all kinds of things can go wrong in labor. Ask any obstetrician gynecologist, they'll tell you. Yet for $10,000, they cannot afford to sit with this woman while she labors alone in a hotel room with no supervision and delivers her dead son or daughter into a toilet. That is how bad it has got in the United States.
And Dr. Levatino, finally, what is it that motivates you to keep going? Because there's such an endless stream of bad news when it comes to the culture of death, and it seems to be always on the march. And obviously there are small victories along the way. Thankfully, I'm sure you and others have changed so many hearts and minds and saved lives. But what is it ultimately that motivates you to keep going and to keep speaking about the reality of abortion?
I could give a lot of answers to that. My memory of my daughter Heather keeps me going. That's the most personal one of all. Just because something is legal doesn't make it right. People in their hearts know that tearing apart a living baby is a bad thing. It's wrong. Now, you may push back through that. Believe me, don't ever, ever talk about an abortion of convenience. There is nothing convenient about an abortion because there's nothing convenient about a pregnancy that's not desired. But on the other hand, in the end, you're talking about killing your son or daughter. And if supporting the sanctity of human life is important, and I believe that it is, then that's enough to keep me going. And I hope it's enough to keep people in Ireland going. I know it's very difficult. I know that it's easy to get discouraged because you're told that you're crazy or all this other stuff. Forget it. You know what's right. Do what's right. That will keep you going.
Yeah, very good, Dr. Levatino. Thank you so much for that. And so to close out, we're going to play that video which you just talked about from that center in New Mexico. And we'd like to just thank you again for being here today.
You're very welcome. It was my pleasure.
Dr. Boyd, Southwestern Women's Options. How may I help you?
Hi, I was hoping to schedule an abortion.
All right. What was the day of your last period?
It was like the middle of May, so like May 15th, probably.
All right, so it looks like we can do this for you, but it is going to be a week-long procedure. So if you're able to come next week, and we start this on the 12th, I'm going to be looking at a fee of $8,000.
Oh.
Now, are you still in your chair?
Oh, just barely.
Just barely. But what you also need to keep in mind is that every week that goes by, the fee goes up by another $1,000.
Well, we get is at your 27 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Oh, really?
Yep. So you're about a month. Yeah, actually, you're about a month off in how you thought.
Oh, wow.
You were.
To insert the injection, it's going straight into the sac and to the pregnancy. Okay, it's bottom down. It'll insert through the baby's bottom. Okay.
Okay,
if
so
it's the head down, it'll be inserted through the head, through the cranium. If we can't catch it early enough, which it has happened. If you're feeling pressure, it's moving down or something coming out, the pregnancy coming out, then you'll want to unlock the door to the hotel room, get your cell phone, and just sit on the toilet. You don't have to look at anything. You don't have to clean anything up or nothing. Just be on the phone with us, and and you could stay on the phone with us until the doctor and nurse get there. Okay?
Oh, good. So just go in the toilet if I'm having labor. Okay.
Yeah.
And what if it does come out when I'm on the toilet?
Just, you don't gotta look down. You don't gotta do anything. The doctor and nurse will come take care of it. If you feel like it's too much to see any of it, then do not let yourself look at it.
Okay.
Okay. If you want to cover yourself, even with like a towel or something.
Okay.
Go ahead.
If you're one of those lucky people that has no pain with contractions and all of a sudden you're like, something's coming out, you sit on the toilet
Okay.
and you call us and you unlock the hotel room and we come in and we take care of you.
If I'm on the toilet and it pops out and it's in the toilet, what do I do?
You would just sit there and you would stay there.
Okay.
And you would not move until we come and get you.
Okay. I mean, I don't have to worry about
you don't have to
taking it out or anything.
You don't have to clean anything. You don't have to do anything.
Okay. You will do. Okay.
We take care of everything.